What's good, y'all? We are down to the final two teams remaining. We are here. We made it to the pinnacle, what we've all been waiting for all season, the NBA Finals. As I'm sure you guys all know, we have the number 1 seeded Boston Celtics coming out of the East and the 5th seeded Dallas Mavericks coming out West. I'm very excited for this matchup. I think it's going to be super entertaining, a lot of back and forth close games in my opinion. And in this video, I wanted to break down the matchup and give my predictions on who I think is going to win. From the beginning of the playoffs, I had the Celtics as my favorite out East, as I'm sure many of you guys did as well. And then out West for the Mavericks, I did have them as my dark horse. I had teams like Denver or Minnesota, honestly, over Dallas. But I did see the potential that Dallas had, and they're taking that potential and running with it. But when it comes to these two teams matching up, I think it's a pretty even matchup. The number one thing I want to look at first is the defense. Both of these teams' defenses are some of the best in the league. Dallas, statistically, they don't really show too much out because, you know, they had the whole trade deadline restructuring their whole roster, basically. And then now in the playoffs, we've seen them really key in defensively. Boston, they have been incredible all regular season, all playoffs, really. They have just been a well-oiled machine. And one of the things that makes Boston so good defensively is their personnel. They could switch basically 1 through 4, almost 1 through 5 sometimes too. When your main guys out there are Jrue Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum, you have no defensive weakness. All 4 of those guys can guard multiple positions very well at some of the highest level, honestly. They have 2 all-defensive team members in there. Jaylen Brown even had an argument to be like that. Jason Tatum, he is a plus defender. Maybe not all defensive, but still a plus defender with his size. And even though they are a switch-heavy defense, when you start off a defensive possession, they have great initial matchups to go up against the Dallas Mavericks. When you talk about Kyrie Irving, who can guard him, they have Jrue Holiday out there, one of the best, if not the absolute best guard defenders in the league. You know, he's going to be able to keep up with Kyrie. If he can't or he starts to get tired, boom, you go and switch out Derek White, another all-defensive team member. Then when you look at Luka Doncic, he's a little bit hard of a cover. I don't know if really anyone could guard him. But Jaylen Brown has the size and the agility to keep up with Luka on the perimeter. If he gets tired, boom, put on Jason Tatum, another guy with great length, great quickness around the perimeter as well. Boston does have one pretty big hole in their defense, though, and that is the fact that they cannot guard a pick and roll. Out of all of the playoff teams, they are tied for second worst in points per possessions when guarding the pick and roll, allowing a full 1.0 point per possession. And that's not a very good thing when you think about the fact that Luka Doncic is one of, if not the absolute best pick and roll ball handler in the entire league. And when I'm kind of just, you know, spitballing ideas on how I could see Boston defending the pick and roll with Dallas, I would assume that they're going to have to play off of one of these two guys, whether that's PJ Washington or Derrick Jones Jr. Both of these guys are having incredible shooting performances this season, this playoffs, you know, some of the best performances of their career. But that's kind of the thing. It's the best of their career. So I think Boston's going to have to just bite the bullet and test it, see if they can really hit those shots when it matters the most. I think they'll have to play off of them, maybe even put Al Horford or Porzingis, whoever's running their center, on one of those guys to kind of just roam and then just let maybe like a Jason Tatum guard the pick and roll so they can just keep that switching going instead of having to put a center out there on Luka. And I don't know if Boston will end up doing that, where they just kind of let their centers roam and guard the paint, take them out of the pick and roll as much as possible. But if they don't, they really have one of 2 options. They either just play the pick and roll straight up, which I don't think would go in their favor. Like I said, Luka Doncic being one of the best pick and roll ball handlers in the entire league. Or they're going to have to switch their centers out onto the perimeter. And, I mean, we just saw in that Minnesota series, when Luka gets a center out there, no matter how good defensively they are, it's a cook session. Now shifting gears to talk about Dallas's defense. This is going to be the best defense that the Boston Celtics have versed this entire playoff run. If you look back at the first round, they versed the Miami Heat, which is a great defensive team. This year, they were a little bit lower than they normally are defensively, and they didn't have Jimmy Butler, one of their best perimeter defenders out there. Then the second round, they went against the Cavs, who, again, a good defensive team, but we're missing Jared Allen, who, in my opinion, is the biggest reason they're so good defensively. Shout out to Evan Mobley. He had a great series, and he's another big reason. But missing out on a rim protector like Jared Allen is definitely going to hurt your defense. And then in the conference finals, they versed the Pacers, and No disrespect to the Pacers, you know, they've definitely elevated their team in the playoffs, but they are still not a good defensive team by any stretch. And since this will be the best defense that they versed all playoffs and the biggest challenge of a team they're facing, we cannot afford for the Celtics to have that on-off switch that we've seen them do, where they kind of play down a competition and just coast through the games, it seems like. And then, you know, eventually when they need to, they will flip that switch and just turn into the best team that we saw, the best team in the NBA, you know, throughout this regular season. They turn into that team again. We saw it when they had those close games with the Pacers. The Pacers would be up, you know, with a few minutes left in the fourth quarter. Some games even a few seconds left in the fourth quarter. And then Boston will flip that switch on, turn into that team, and close out the games. And, you know, ultimately it ended in a sweep. We can't really have that though. What I want the Boston Celtics switch to look like is it's flipped on, and if you flip that switch again, it flips into overdrive, where they go to another level. That's what they're gonna have against this Dallas team. Throughout this whole playoffs, the Dallas Mavericks have done a great job at making the opposing team stars struggle. If you look just into last series with the Minnesota Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards had a very shaky series, especially in the beginning. He did not look good whatsoever. You know, they forced him into some bad passes, some turnovers, forcing him to take, I think he took like 12 threes in one of those games. You know, even Karl Anthony Towns had a bad series. I would say almost every star besides Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has just been really struggling against this Dallas Mavericks defense. Shout out to Shai because he went absolutely nuclear all series. But even like Paul George had his up and downs. James Harden was, you know, kind of shaky there too. Jalen Williams, if you want to count him in that star category, he didn't really have the best series against the Mavericks. So I think it's going to be really important that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are fully locked in and engaged. Jason Tatum, I don't want you taking those sidestep threes constantly, and you need to get to the rim. Jaylen Brown, you've been doing that, so shout out to you. Keep that going. But we really need those intensities from these two stars because Dallas knows, they know how to make them work. And when you look at the matchups that the Mavericks have for JT and JB defensively, they have PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. Both guys, I think, are pretty good options for either of the Jays. I just don't really know which one Dallas is going to put on each other. When you look at PJ Washington, he's got the bigger size, a little stronger. Would you put him on Jason Tatum to match the size and strength he has? Or would you put him on Jaylen Brown to match the play style? You know, he plays stronger and gets to the basket more often. Derrick Jones Jr., on the other hand, he's a little bit slender and can, you know, move a little better laterally on the perimeter. Do you put him on Jason Tatum to match his play style of playing the perimeter? Or do you put him on Jaylen Brown to match that size and body a little more? Luckily, I'm not the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks, so I don't have to make that decision. If I had to, though, I probably would put Derrick Jones Jr. on Jason Tatum and then put PJ on Jaylen Brown. One thing that I'm not really too sure how the Mavericks are going to be able to guard is the stretchability that the centers have for Boston. Whether you're talking Porzingis, who will be back in this series for Game 1, or Al Horford, both of these guys are very, very capable shooters from the center position, whether it's in the corner, top of the key, on the wings. They could really shoot it from wherever, and that's going to have to pull out Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively from the paint. Those two guys are a huge part of Dallas' defense, being rim deterrers, and if they're going to have to be switching out onto the perimeter and guarding these stretch fives, I really don't know how that's going to impact Dallas' defense. And like I said, Porzingis will be back for Game 1, but you gotta question how rusty he's gonna be. Will his shot be looking as good as it did throughout the regular season and the beginning of the playoffs where he was playing? Because he hasn't played an NBA basketball game in, over a month now at this point. And then to come back and it's instantly NBA Finals intensity basketball, I feel like that could be a little bit of a struggle for Porzingis. I hope he does good, but that's just a little something to key into. And since both of these teams have such good defenses, what I think it really will come down to is the star power, and this series is absolutely loaded with it. We have two legitimate superstars with Luka Doncic and Jason Tatum, and then two absolute stars of Jaylen Brown and Kyrie Irving. When you talk about Luka, he has just been dominating these playoffs, dropping 30-point triple-doubles, hitting game winners, scoring 20 points in a quarter, 5 threes in a game. All these crazy things, just absolutely killing stuff. I'm sure he's going to be able to continue that in this next level. Jason Tatum, he started the playoffs a little bit slow, but as this went on, he's really picked up his play, and he hasn't had to dominate like Luka has had to do, but when he is called upon, he's done it. You know, when you look at, I think it was Game 1 against the Pacers, He absolutely took over the game and towards the end of the fourth quarter and into overtime. Then when you look at their two co-stars, these are probably two of the best secondary guys in the entire NBA. They might be the two best. I didn't really think about it too much. But Kyrie Irving and Jaylen Brown, probably some of the best, at least top 3 secondary options in the NBA. Jaylen Brown literally just won Eastern Conference Finals MVP as the second option on Boston. He has had an incredible playoffs as well, just dominating, getting to the rim at will. Kyrie, being the incredible scorer he is, just makes the toughest shots look so simple. Last time he was in the finals, he hit one of the clutchest shots in basketball history. I think it's going to be a super fun matchup. I think a lot of these games are going to be really close. I don't see many of these games being 15, 20, 10-point games. I really think it's going to be decided by single digits almost every single game. And when you talk about clutch time, I don't know if there's two guys I would want more than Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. So for that reason, I'm going Mavs in 6. And don't get mad at me, Boston fans. I was really close to picking you guys. I was teetering back and forth. But last time I had this gut feeling to go with the Mavericks was last series against the Timberwolves. I ended up going Timberwolves in 7, but I had that gut feeling to go Mavericks. I didn't. I was wrong. So I felt like I had to give them some justice and pick them and side with them for this finals. Mavs in 6, baby. Let me know what you guys think of my predictions, though, in the comments down below. Let me know who you think is going to win the finals and in how many games. Let's see who's correct. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.